Welcome to Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast.
Welcome back to Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast with Allison Phillips. Allison is a Texas estate planning attorney and founder of the Burns Phillip Law Firm, where she helps individuals and families make thoughtful decisions that keep the people they love out of court and out of conflict. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're discussing one of the hardest questions for parents to think about. What actually happens to your children if something unexpected happens to you? Miss Allison, welcome back.
Yes, I'm really excited about this topic, Evan. I'm so glad that we're covering this. I am a mom, and I have an 8 and 9-year-old at home right now. They're 8 and 9. So this topic is something that is it's really important to me as a person, and being able to talk to people about it and kind of walk through all the possibilities is so valuable. There's so many people that they have expectations and they don't realize that it's either a misconception, it's a not legally binding, so it's so important.
No, see, absolutely, and you have a unique perspective versus, professionally and personally. So you're going to be able to tell the people at home some unique things, and a lot of parents assume their children would automatically go to a specific family member if something happened to them. How does that process actually work in the state of Texas when no legal plan is in place?
They're usually surprised to learn it's not going to go the way they think, necessarily. It's not a guarantee. So I actually have this conversation pretty much with every parent that sits in front of me with minor kids. They know who they think they want to be in charge. They know that person will step up, but they don't realize that there is not a automatic person designated by the statute or the code that's going to be the next in line. So, I get parents in here, they're like, oh, I've got my mom is going to take care of the kids. And it's like, okay, great. I love that you've got that set up already, that you've already got your mind wrapped around that. But what if someone else wants to also be that person after you pass? There's no guarantee that your mom is the one that's going to be appointed, especially if there's more than one that steps forward. If you think about it, we'll kind of hypothetical this a little bit. Let's just say something happens to you and your mom, my mom, would step in and say, hey, I'll take the kids. But then maybe my husband's brother comes in and says, actually, I think I should take the kids. They spend a lot of time with us. I think that's what my brother would have wanted. And they need to be around their cousins. And then, or maybe one of your aunts or uncles that you've been really close to your whole life that might live out of state comes in and says, actually, I think I should take them. They need a fresh start. They need to be somewhere else. In this hypothetical, all three people love your children. All three people think that they know what is best for your kids. And if you haven't already made a legal nomination saying that this is what I actually want, then the court's going to have to take all three of these individuals and look at them on paper and decide who on paper is the best fit, who is in the best interest of your child. And there's not a statute that I can lean on and say they're probably going to go with grandparent because that's what the code says they should. Because it's just not there. They're going to go with who on paper looks like is in the best interest of your child.
So let's kind of delve a little bit more deeper in that. In the first few days after that tragedy, what kind of uncertainty can families face if parents never formally name those guardians, in a legal capacity?
Oh, those first few days are rough. I mean, obviously, there's a tragedy. Everybody knows there's going to be trauma and grief. That is common sense. That's just what happens. But what they don't think is the actual step-to-step process that is going to happen. For one, who picks the kids up from school? Who takes them to the doctor? Who is going to keep them overnight? If you don't have anything set up already, things can go really badly. For example, and I use this example a lot because this specific example is the thing that triggered me to realize that I had fear of this issue. And, hypothetical, mom and dad, I'll use me and my husband, just continue the vein of being the one stepping in here. Husband and I go to a company party. We go out to dinner with clients, we go out to dinner with bosses, we go to a company dinner. We're on our way home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's a tragedy. Tragic accident. We don't make it. Kids are at home with the babysitter. The babysitter, 2 o'clock rolls around. Oh, they're running late. Maybe shoots off a text message. 2:30 rolls around. Maybe starts calling. 3 o'clock rolls around. No text response. No phone call response. No instructions on what to do. If it's a younger babysitter, they might call their parents first.
Right.
But if it's an older, more independent babysitter, most likely they're going to call 911. I mean, you may have given them, if you thought ahead enough to give them some numbers to call, then they might call those numbers. But it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Are those people going to answer? Are they asleep? Do they have do not disturb on? Are they among the small, smart subset of the population that actually turns their phone off so it doesn't influence their sleep? Like they may not answer when the babysitter calls. So they call 911. Here come the cops, right? Cops come. They might have already connected that this is the home of the person who was in this tragedy, or they may not have. What if it's a different jurisdiction? And all they know, they're coming in, all they know is there is a babysitter sitting here with these children that is telling them that she had no intention of spending the night with the kids, doesn't have the authority to stay the night with the kids, right? That's what the cop is hearing. Can't get a hold of mom and dad. No one else is answering their phone, doesn't know what to do.
Mm.
That cop's going to be looking at these kids thinking, okay, I can't risk the liability of leaving these kids with this babysitter who just told me the parents weren't planning to do that. Here's babysitters already called these numbers. They haven't answered, haven't got a hold of anybody. 3 a.m. could be shift change. They're like, I'm almost off
Mm.
duty and I don't have time or I don't have the availability of resources right now at 3 o'clock in the morning to have this babysitter vetted to determine if she's safe to keep these kids. I don't have time to go find a neighbor and have them vetted to see if they're safe to keep the kids. And he doesn't want to risk, he or she, they don't want to risk the liability of leaving these kids with somebody that's not a good, safe place. So what are they going to do? They're going to take your kids to somebody who has been vetted by CPS in the foster care system, somebody who's already been found by the state to be a safe space for children. And that's where your kids are going to go. And that my daughter gets massive anxiety about sleeping anywhere where me or her father aren't with her. Her first sleepover was a sleepover together. I went and stayed too. I mean, she had so much anxiety about the concept. And so I see this where, thankfully at her age, I was friends with all of her parents, all of the parents of her friends. So, we just kind of had a girls' night where we all just stayed over to break that first sleepover wall, I guess. And I'm like, man, they get anxiety about staying with Nani, who is their favorite person in the entire world.
Right.
I can't risk that they get the worst news of their little short lives so far and then have to go stay with a stranger they've never met in a
Mm.
home they've never been in um, in somebody else's in a bed in somebody else's home, and they may not even be together. If the placement that the officer finds only has one bed, they may end up not even with each other to lean on. They may be separate. So, as I'm going through this hypothetical, and I know it sounds very doomsday and terrifying, but you know, I may hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So if there is a avenue that could potentially happen that is just something I cannot allow, I have to plan to make sure it's not an available option.
With that being said, if things start to get worked out and if family members still disagree about who should care for the children, how does that situation usually get resolved?
If they are in disagreement and the resolution is court, usually guardianship proceedings in court, they're going to have to go to court. They're all going to have to throw their hat in the ring. And then the judge in charge is going to have to look at them on paper. And they're not going to do any, vetting of skill. They're going to be looking at black and white paper. So, what does the financial stability look like? What does age look like? What does longevity with the child look like? They're not looking at what the relationship is between this person and the child. They're looking at blood relative, family friend. They're looking at that, but they're not actually asking like does your child get along with this person? You know, they're not looking at, does this person raise the kids the same way? They're
Hmm.
focusing on the black and white stuff that they can qualify on paper. It, if you think about it, say you've got one person here, one of the relatives, they live in a beautiful home. It's large, they have kids, they're zoned to a great school district. And here they are saying, I want to take care of these kids. They've got lots of disposable income. Their kids are always clean, well fed. They're in sports, all those things, right? And then you've got another relative over here that maybe a little younger, doesn't have kids, maybe lives in an apartment, more of an entry level position at work, but works remotely. And you're looking at it and you're like, well, I'm taking care of the financial responsibility of my kids, so I'm not worried about the fact that they don't have as much disposable income. I love that they're home, that they have time, that they can be there with my kid. Maybe this person over here who is also a good candidate with all that financial stability and the good school zones, but maybe they have to work 80 hours a week to afford it. And you're like, well, I've kind of been more of a hands-on parent with my kids. So I would really, if I had my choice, I think I would want this person over here who doesn't have kids, can invest fully in my kids, and has that time available to spend with them. I'm a little less worried about whether or not they have a lot of money. I'm more worried about whether or not they can be there. But the court, you never know what the court's going to pick. They're looking at strong, strong family, strong house, strong income, a little bit more unstable, lives in an apartment. They might pick this other one, even though you're thinking, well, what I thought was most important is, can they be with my kids? Are they going to be present? Are they going to be home for dinner? So they don't know your priorities. And if you haven't given them any guidance and instruction on that, all they get to do is speculate.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. A lot of parents focus on who would raise their children, but not necessarily on how the money would be managed for the children. What planning decisions become especially important in that regard?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people are surprised to hear it doesn't have to be the same person. A lot of people are just like, I'm picking this person and this person's going to be taking care of my kids. And they're thinking the whole kit and caboodle. They don't realize that it could be, somebody in charge of the assets and the finances, and then somebody in charge of the raising of the children. And, sometimes I get parents who are like, oh, you can split it. That's wonderful. Maybe person that I want to raise my kids, it's not the person I first mentioned because I was worried about their money management strategies, but I can fix that. So now I can go back to giving them my kids. Or it might be you know what, the person I've chosen is excellent with money and they're excellent with kids. But that's a lot to put on somebody. And so I think I want to put, the financial growth and management on this person over here so that this person can focus on taking care of the kids. So it just depends on, the relationships you have with the people you're choosing. It depends on what kind of assets you have that need to be managed. Are they going to be more intense, more high energy, like more involved, more fingers in the pie, I guess you can say? Or, and also, who's got what kind of personalities you're talking about? Because some people I mean, like, you might love your brother and he's a wonderful person, but he's more of a numbers guy, great for the money. But, your sister, she's a wonderful person and you love her to death, but she's more of a creative and more of a social and more of a, like, let's get our princess dresses on and run around the house, right?
Mhm.
And two wonderful people that will have amazing influence on your kid, but in such a different way. And you can grasp both benefits and both of those things that are their high value, that they're good at, that they have to teach your children. You can take both of those things and give them to your children by appointing one as finances and one as guardian.
So like, let's say that is all in place. How important is it for parents to name somebody for a backup, just in case those first people that are those good fits choose or maybe are unable or unwilling to step into that role later on?
Oh, yes. I am a huge fan of depth. Depth is so important to me. And I've had parents that have like, we have to keep going. And I'm like, well, you don't have to, but I recommend it because, you know, the first person that you choose may have predeceased you. They may not be there anymore. And now your nominations are no good if that's the only person on there. Second, they, or, maybe your first person, maybe there's been some significant changes in their life and they're no longer like they're fine. They don't have any issues, but they're no longer able to take on children. So you want to have the next best bet because if you only have the one and it doesn't work out, then everybody's back into going to court to figure it out, right? If they can't come to an agreement. And they're going to have to go to court to at least get authority and permission. But, if I like to go deep, I like to go with depth for more than even just that. It's not even just making sure you have backup plans on backup plans. It's also, I don't believe that these plans are static. They are not one-off decisions. The decision that you make when your child is 7 might not be the same decision that you would make when your child is 17. They have to be dynamic and they have to be able to shift and change as our children grow and become the people that they're going to be. At 7, you might have an idea like, oh, I hope they become this type of person and this is what I want for them. And I want them to have all this set up just like this because they're going to follow the plan I have in place. But then as they age up, you're like, oh, wait, they're going a different path.
Mm.
It's a good path. It's a fine path. That's just who they are. They're just different people than I thought they were. But they are still wonderful people. But now all the plans that I made for how that was going to work are no longer any good for them. So you want to have that depth. You want to make sure that you have planned for that worst case scenario. And like I said, I know sometimes it sounds really doomsday here, and it's a very Chicken Little running around like, oh, sky is falling, the sky is falling. But at the end of the day, it's protecting the kids. It's making sure that if there's a path you don't want to happen, that you cut off that possibility of it happening, hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and just making sure that there is stability during all of this. Because when there's no plan, when there's no instructions, when there's no documentation, the uncertainty is skyrocketing through the roof. And in addition to trying to go to court, trying to prove up what they're trying to prove up to whoever's the decision maker, the judge, however it works out, um, trying to make themselves appear the best scenario, you throw in the uncertainty on top of the grief and the trauma and all the conflict can permanently affect your child's future.
So let's kind of tie it all together. Once parents finally put that clear plan in place for their children, what changes for them afterwards?
Peace of mind, relief, knowing that it got done. They know that they've done everything that they can right now under current law, under current situation, with current family dynamics. They've evaluated everything. They've done everything they can to make sure that they have left a clear plan that communicates to everyone that's left what they wanted. So they don't have to fight over, but no, she said she wanted this. He said he wanted that. They would have wanted this. I knew them best, so you should listen to me. I raised them, so I should be the one that everybody's listening to. All those conversations with all those statements, they are no longer even available because they don't get to speculate what you wanted. You told them what you wanted. You laid out the plan. You created the pathway to completion and you communicated how much you love them by telling them that I cared enough about you that I did this before anything happened to me without any knowledge that anything ever would. I cared enough about you that I wanted to make sure you had what you needed to focus on moving through your grief, to focus on guiding my children through their grief, and to be stable and not feel like you're just a floating in the wind trying to figure this out as you go. And also because you do all this planning, because I did all this planning, I'm not going to let my estate get drained with litigation related to what should have happened, what would have happened, what could have happened. I'm making sure that my kids are receiving their inheritance in a way that's not going to derail their future. I hadn't mentioned this yet. I was planning to, but I hadn't mentioned it yet. But if you think about it, if you have no plan in place, no will, no plan, no nominations, the kids can't necessarily receive outright their inheritance if they're minors. They have to wait till they're of the age of consent to do it, right? To receive. So the court will hold it. The court, family, somebody's going to hold their inheritance on their behalf until they turn 18, but then they get everything outright at 18 unless you put a plan in place to ensure that that money was properly grown during their lifetime, that somebody that you trusted was making sure it was protected for them, for their future, that it supported them as they were children and took care of the household. Like I said, I think I mentioned earlier that uh, you want to make sure that you financially prepared. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Life insurance, your current asset structure, growing it while it's sitting and waiting for them to turn 18. But you also want to make sure that you've accounted for the fact that a, an 18-year-old coming into a large sum of money can completely derail whatever trajectory they currently are on. I mean, I was a
Mm.
very responsible child. And at 18, I mean, I was a straight A student. I was already college bound. I already had a career path laid out in front of me, right? But if I had come into a large sum of money at 18, even with my maturity and my responsibility, I can't tell you that I wasn't taking all my friends on a graduation trip to Cozumel or Cancun or Europe,
Right.
depending on how much you got. you know, $1,000 to me at 18 that had a much different impact than $1,000 to me now, you know?
Mm.
So, I mean, and $1,000, it could be substantially more than that. It could be less than that, but that's a nice round number that is enough to make people smile because they're like, oh, $1,000. But, when you're 18 and you've been working for $7 an hour when you're not in school, so maybe 15 hours a week, $1,000, that's life changing in your mind. So you just want to make sure that you've thought it out, that you've planned it out. And then and looping back to the question, the peace of mind that you get from knowing that you're not going to derail your children at 18, that you've given them everything that they need to be on a strong path moving forward. And if they derail from that path, it's not because you did something wrong. It's not because you failed them. It's that, things happen, life happens, but you did everything you could to try to give them everything that they needed to be the best person they're meant to be.
Mm. That's good stuff. Miss Allison, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it.
Awesome stuff. That's it for today's episode of Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast with Allison Phillips. If you're ready to make thoughtful decisions about your future and create a plan that protects the people you love, visit bplestateplan.com to learn more. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, share the show, and leave a review. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.